Tonight, grandstanding.
You are the epitome of white privilege.
Shockwaves from the president's son's surprise appearance at his own contempt hearing.
He's here. Doesn't seem to be too afraid.
Plus, more than 100 hostages remain Hamas captives as the war in Gaza rages on. And Christian support.
Donald Trump is my guy.
Former President Trump's star power among white evangelicals in Iowa.
So God gave us Trump.
Even as a new video rubs some voters the wrong way.
He is definitely not the messiah of people for Iowa.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Fireworks on Capitol Hill after Hunter Biden crashes a House hearing. Good evening, I'm Jenna Browder.
And from the CBN studio here in Washington, D.C., I'm John Jessup. Well, the president's son stunned lawmakers when he showed up unannounced on Capitol Hill today in a hearing that was focused on him.
Yeah, the House Oversight Committee intended to begin the process of holding Hunter Biden in contempt for defying a congressional subpoena. CBN Washington correspondent Hillary Powell is on the story and begins our coverage tonight. Hillary?
Well, really, the stunt ended up turning into a hot mess, and the hearing was really contentious. On full display was the standoff between Congress and a member of President Biden's family. Now, when Hunter Biden arrived in the committee room to sit in the audience with his legal team, it resulted in a political frenzy.
You're here for a political stunt. This is just a PR stunt to you. This is just a game.
Sitting among the crowd, Hunter Biden's surprise appearance caused chaos Wednesday, just as House Republicans began the process of holding him in criminal contempt of Congress for not complying with a subpoena for a closed-door deposition last month. Republican Representative Nancy Mace insisted Hunter Biden be arrested, and Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia called him out as he left during her remarks.
Excuse me, Hunter. Apparently you're afraid of my words. What a coward.
Democrat lawmakers argue Biden should be allowed to speak publicly.
It just so happens the witness is here. Then the only folks that are afraid to hear from the witness with the American people watching are my friends on the other side of the aisle.
Republican Chairman James Comer noted committee rules, including a 3-day notice for witnesses, prevented Biden from testifying even though he was there. After leaving, his attorney made a brief statement outside the hearing room.
The Republican chairs today, then, are commandeering an unprecedented resolution to hold someone in contempt who has offered to publicly answer all their proper questions. The question there is, what are they afraid of?
Meanwhile, as the House Judiciary Committee held a separate hearing on the contempt resolution, one Democratic member called out hypocrisy, saying the chairman himself has ignored past subpoenas.
Is this hearing a joke? This is a committee that now cares about subpoena compliance when you failed to honor your own subpoena.
CBN News contributor Nathan Gonzalez says the person with the least say in the matter spoke the loudest by just being present.
It's hard for Republicans to make the case that Hunter Biden is avoiding questioning when he shows up at a committee hearing and sits in the front row. But I think to the average American, they don't understand why Republicans aren't willing to interview him publicly.
Following his brief appearance, the only remarks Hunter Biden made to reporters came when they asked why he had his father on speakerphone several times during his business meetings. His response, quote, "If he called you, you would answer the phone," he responded to them.
All right, Hillary, there was another contentious hearing on Capitol Hill today over the administration's handling of the southern border as Republicans begin an impeachment push against DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. What can you tell us about that?
Well, you know, honestly, Jenna, compared to the Hunter Biden shocker today and all of that drama, the first impeachment hearing against the DHS secretary was relatively well ordered. House Republicans are accusing Alejandro Mayorkas of, quote, failed leadership on border issues, highlighting record high levels of illegal migrants crossing or attempting to cross the southern border. Democrats called the impeachment hearing, quote, baseless and a political stunt. Now, there have been a number of attempts to impeach cabinet members throughout history, but only one has ever been successful. That was nearly 100 years ago during the Gilded Age, when the House voted unanimously to impeach Grant's Secretary of War over charges of corruption. That was Secretary William Belknap. He was not convicted. He won an acquittal in the Senate in 1876. So a bit of history there.
All right, Hillary Powell, thank you very much. Well, overseas tonight, fears of a widening war in the Mideast are escalating after renewed attacks on shipping vessels in the Red Sea by Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen.
The United States is now considering retaliatory strikes in Yemen after American and British warships intercepted a barrage of missiles and drones.
They are threatening and targeting commercial vessels with ties to countries all over the world, many of which have no connection to Israel whatsoever. These attacks are unlawful, they're reckless, and they are escalatory.
Tensions between Israel and its northern neighbor, Lebanon, are intensifying. On foreign travel, America's top diplomat is urging de-escalation and a path towards a lasting peace as the war in Gaza rages on.
We were focused on making sure that the conflict ongoing now in Gaza doesn't spread to other places. That's been our focus since October 7th, and it remains our focus today.
As Israel moves into a less intense phase of the war, the United States and the Jewish state have some disagreements about what a post-war future in Gaza will look like.
Well, more than 100 people are still being held hostage by Hamas. Omri Moran is one of them.
Earlier today, we spoke with his brother-in-law, Moshe Levi, to discuss what their family has been through the past 95 days since the October 7th terror attack.
You could tell us about Omri. What is he like?
Omri is a 46-year-old man. He's a shiatsu therapist and a gardener in Kibbutz Nachal Oz. We like to say that he heals plants during the day and then heals his patients during the evenings in his clinic. He's a very spiritual man, connected to nature, very rooted in the Israeli landscape. The house husband in a way, because he wanted my sister to develop her career in Sapir College. So he would spend a lot of time with their two daughters, Roni and Alma, 2.5 and 9-month-old. And he loves sports. His favorite author is Haruki Murakami. He has all his books. And we can't wait to have him back because he's an amazing human being.
I understand by relation he's your brother-in-law. He's married to your sister, Lachey. As you mentioned, they have 2 young daughters. They were held captive, exposed to things that no one should ever have to experience, let alone young children. But can I ask, how are you doing and how are they doing?
Yeah. It's been a difficult time for the entire family the past 3 months, and I can't believe it's been 3 months. I grew up on the Israel-Gaza border in Sderot. It's a blue-collar town on the border, and my parents still live there. They were displaced. My entire immediate family is displaced, my 2 sisters and my parents. And we have to cope with that. We have to cope with the loss of the sense of security, sense of home. And of course, continue our advocating for Omri. Lishai and the girls endured significant trauma during their time in captivity. They were abused, they were held captive for hours, felt helpless. My niece Roni, who's 2.5 years old, throws guns in kindergarten now, and that's shocking because she experienced the violence and she remembers it. She remembers, she says, and I quote her, that bad people took Daddy. We have to bring Daddy back. And she already has a therapist, a 2.5-year-old child. So is my sister, of course. But my sister is a strong woman, and she advocates every day for Omri.
I wanted to ask you about the pendant.
This is a painting, a drawing my nephew made. He's 9 years old now. of a heart inside a house. And we made it to remind us our mission every day and to give hope for others to see that we carry this heart with us until he returns. And this I received from Ambassador Roger Carstens, who is from the State Department here in the U.S. He works to bring our hope, to bring the hostages home alongside Israel, alongside many other stakeholders. We met him yesterday, and his words really touched me. And so I carry this now and carry this close to my heart, close to my shirt, or for Marie and Ronnie. And thank you for asking. This is so important to me and to our entire family.
Have you heard any updates on Omri, or what's the latest you've heard about his condition, how he's doing?
The latest we heard was in late November or beginning of December, from one of the hostages who was released. We understood that Omri is still alive, but it's been almost 6 weeks now since then. And so what wasn't true then may no longer be true now, because every second captivity is eternity for them. It risks their lives, and we worried sick because we hear testimonies of those released hostages, and many of them, not all, but many say and share that they were held in difficult conditions, deprived of food and water, proper sanitary conditions. Some were abused, tortured, sexually violated. So when you wake up every day, you think about what he's facing there. He's a very strong man mentally, and I think he probably brings hope to those he's held captive with. Although we know that for a few weeks he was in isolation, at least according to some of the hostages. It's hard to me to know what's the situation now and to imagine good things, but we try.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu acknowledged that the negotiations for the hostages has been complicated because of the death of a senior Hamas leader. I know that you mentioned Danny's father. He was angry after one of the meetings with the Israeli cabinet where he just walked out. How do you and the family and other families maintain hope?
It's difficult to maintain hope because we know that there is a lot of uncertainty in the battlefield. There's a lot of uncertainty on whether the actor on the other side, Hamas and their accomplices, are willing to take the steps necessary to allow the hostages return home. And we know that there are complexities in any negotiation, especially something like that. But we continue acting because that's what we have to do. So I advocate here in Washington, D.C. I advocate with communities, irrespective of their faith and where they are. I've been here in the U.S. with Jewish and Christian communities, and I think we should continue widening the spectrum. And those people give me hope because they share the pain, and they share our hope that he returns home.
We thank you so much for coming in today. It's great to have you. And
Moving interview. Well, how Christian voters look to affect Monday's closely watched Iowa caucuses. That story and more just 2 minutes away.
welcome back. A recent Associated Press NORC poll finds only 37% of American adults have a favorable view of former President Donald Trump. But among white evangelicals, that number jumps to 56%.
Ahead of next week's Iowa caucuses, Trump hopes to capitalize on his support among Christians. But as Matt Galka reports from the campaign trail, a recent video touted by the former president is rubbing some the wrong way.
We will pray to God for our strength and for our liberty. We will pray for God and we will pray with God.
More than 50% of Iowa evangelicals support Donald Trump. At almost double the next closest candidate, the group is seen as the foundation for what some believe will be an easy win come caucus time.
Other candidates might be saying at this point, don't believe the polls in Iowa. But the packed parking lots at his rallies and Trump supporters say otherwise.
Speaking on statistics, everybody loves him.
You believe the polling?
I believe the people I talk to. I mean, I can't hardly find anybody that doesn't like him. The people that don't like him either aren't active or they weren't going to change their minds anyway, but it's not very many.
Donald Trump is my guy. He has world support. He has a mission that needs to be completed. He has faith in what he's doing.
Trump boasts a number of pastor endorsements across the state.
Gates of hell will not prevail against us.
Including pastor and Iowa State legislator Brad Sherman, who prayed over the candidate at a December rally.
You know, I run into Christians all the time say, how can you support President Trump? He's an immoral man, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I always want to ask, oh, yeah, who is that one candidate that's perfect? I forgot. What's his name? Oh, yeah, there isn't one. I just hear these people that have this idea about the perfect candidate, and they don't cut anybody any slack.
Trump's rivals are now attacking his record on pro-life issues.
Do you think Donald Trump is not pro-life?
Of course not. I mean, when you're saying that pro-life protections are a terrible thing, by definition, you are not pro-life.
God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a caretaker, so God gave us Trump.
A video shared on social media and played at some of his Iowa rallies, titled God Made Trump, has been rejected by some in the Iowa evangelical community.
He is definitely not the Messiah of people for Iowa.
While Fort Des Moines Church of Christ pastor Mike DeMastis calls Trump the most pro-life president in America's history, he adds the video is disturbing to him and other evangelicals.
It's got this messianic tone to it, and that's not how we view Trump. And I have every bit of respect for our former president. I do. I genuinely do. But when you're positing yourself in a messianic way, that's maybe a little bit more humility, please.
Do enough voters share the same concerns to make a difference? That should be decided during the caucus vote on Monday. Matt Gelka, CBN News.
Thank you, Matt. Well, let's bring in Tony Perkins, host of Washington Watch and president of the Family Research Council. Tony, always great to have you. So a lot of white evangelical Christians in Iowa are backing former President Trump, as we just saw in Matt's package. But Bob Vander Plaats, head of the family leader and prominent evangelical figure in Iowa, endorsed Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Vander Plaats has a record, though, Tony, as you know, of backing every caucus winner since 2008. So is this the year the streak will be broken? Do you see Trump potentially losing evangelical support?
Well, the numbers are not moving. We have seen Donald Trump's numbers. His support has remained pretty much steady. In fact, if anything, it's increased a little bit as much as he's been attacked, in the courts, in the media. And I think, again, this goes back to 2016, that many evangelicals can identify with him as the establishment, the left, attacks him. So I'm not going to look into the crystal ball and predict what's going to happen, but I don't see him losing support among evangelicals.
Tonight, Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis hit the stage for a CNN debate. Tony, what are you hoping to hear from the candidates tonight?
Well, I think Ron DeSantis has some really good policies that he has promoted and he has accomplished in Florida. Nikki Haley doesn't have that kind of a track record to run on, and so a lot of what she has to say is just kind of what she's talking on. She didn't do a lot as governor of South Carolina. This is in part what gives Donald Trump such strength and staying power among not just white evangelicals, but it's much broader. He has a lot of support within the African-American community because what he did from an economic standpoint and opportunity. So he has a very solid record to run on in what he did as president for 4 years. I think Ron DeSantis probably, that's why he's running second, is that he has a pretty strong platform to run on as well, but it's limited to Florida.
Tony, just a few seconds left. You just delivered the prayer at the inauguration of Louisiana's new governor, in which you noted life, liberty, and property aren't governmental rights, but are rights given by God. In today's political climate, is there any danger that Christians could lose sight of what's the bigger picture?
I think so, but it's interesting, John. It was actually, as I prayed, that comes from the preamble to the Louisiana state constitution. There's a recognition, and I think we need to be reminded, we need to remind our elected officials that these rights that we enjoy as Americans are not something that's granted to us by government. They are given to us by God, and as we align ourselves with Him in our policies, our actions, our hearts, then we are the beneficiaries of those blessings. If we depart from Him, so do these blessings.
All right, Tony, always good to see you. We appreciate your insights, Tony. Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
All right, thank you all. Happy New Year.
Thanks, Tony. Happy New Year to you. An undisclosed illness sends the White House into a spiral. The change is in the works after Secretary Austin's hospitalization when we come back.
The White House says it's reviewing protocols for notification and transferring authority to subordinates for cabinet officials. The news comes in response to Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's hospitalization that the White House and Congress didn't know about for days. Austin had an elective procedure to treat prostate cancer right before Christmas. He was in the hospital with complications for multiple days before the president was notified. How the hospitalization and cancer diagnosis were disclosed is calling into question Secretary Austin's choices, as well as the decision-making of the Pentagon as a whole.
And we recognize the need to be better when it comes to transparency. And as a senior DoD public affairs official, I will work very hard with our senior staff to make sure that we're doing due diligence and meeting the standard that the public expects and has communicated very loudly throughout this process.
Secretary Austin appointed a deputy to take over while he was hospitalized. He has since resumed his full duties.
Well, another round of extreme weather is on its way to blast the same parts of the country still reeling from deadly winter storms. At least 5 people are dead tonight after severe thunderstorms and wind rocked the central and eastern United States Tuesday, leaving hundreds of thousands still without power. Extreme weather across the country canceled more than 1,000 domestic and international flights. In Iowa, the heavy snow made it tough for candidates on the campaign trail just days ahead of the Iowa caucuses. The new storm is heading east after originating in the Pacific Northwest, which got slammed hard Tuesday by blizzard conditions.
All right, speaking of snow, still ahead, a Good Samaritan lends a hand to this presidential candidate. Next on Faith Nation. All right, finally tonight, GOP presidential hopefuls are hitting the campaign trail ahead of Monday's Iowa caucuses.
And while snow has caused some events to be canceled, one candidate hasn't let it stop his last-minute push. Vivek Ramaswamy was leaving a campaign stop when a snowstorm hit. After safely traversing the state for 5 hours, suddenly the candidate's SUV got stuck in a snow ditch. In a Facebook post, he says a passerby helped push the car out, thanking the Good Samaritan. Always nice to have someone who's willing to stop and help someone in.
Absolutely, especially in that weather. That looks very cold. We should mention before we let you go, Chris Christie has dropped out of the race.
So it'll be a slimmed-down debate stage with just DeSantis and Nikki Haley, and you won't have anyone else there.
Yeah, it should be a good debate.
Well, thanks so much for watching.
Have a great night.